Infrastructure.
Masterpiece.
Residential, industrial, commercial.
Define, design, refine. Architect's World. Delving into the field of design. Opening the mind to possibilities. Highlighting opportunities for everyday living. Architect's World. Tuesdays 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. on 92.3 Nigeria Info.
A very good afternoon to you. Welcome back to the sunny side. This is Architects World Activated. I'm Gabriella, welcoming you to the show every Tuesday, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. We're going to have conversations about the world of design. And I have someone who is always here to lend us his wealthy resource in that regard. So, you know, I don't do this alone. You already know that. With me here in the studio is the world-renowned, recognized, endorsed, the one and only, the master of all, architect Bozimo. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, my destiny helper, Gabriella. It's so nice to be here with you.
Touche.
It's great to be here as always.
Oh,
and
my.
I'm very fortunate today that we are joined by some people who are clearly at the highest levels of academic excellence. From here in River State, we have with us two PhDs from River State University. We have Dr. Daminabo and Dr. Enwin, whose voices you will hear respectively.
Good afternoon, listeners.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, listeners.
Excellent.
Wow, I'm surrounded by professionals.
We want to be
I'm
as
blessed,
professional
aren't
as
I?
you. This is your sphere.
Architect Bozimo, don't worry. Don't worry. I'm going to go back into my room and gather my arsenal and come prepared for you next week.
No problem.
Don't worry.
We are here. By God's
Welcome,
grace.
welcome,
Thank
gentlemen.
you. Thank you.
And welcome to the conversation. You do know that you can be a part of the conversation. The phone lines will be open shortly, and when that happens, you can obviously, join us as we discuss on the show today. So today we're going to be talking about one of the things that's been happening, Architect Bozimo. For the past week or so, we've had more than 3 cases of fire incidents in River State. That's alarming.
Very alarming, completely unfortunate, and in many cases you will find possibly avoidable. And so today our topic is really titled Fire Safety Fundamentals. Because no matter what you do or think, when these fires happen, they affect people's lives, they affect people's property, and the first thing you're always worried about, of course, is life.
Right.
Safety. Life safety is paramount in any objective in the built environment. So it could be fire, it could be building collapse, it could be slips, trips and falls. Whatever it is, you want to make sure that people using any aspects of the built environment, whether indoors or outdoors, are using it in a perfectly safe manner. And there are codes and standards and specifications that are all part of the arsenal of every one of the built environment professionals to ensure that people use their buildings and parks and offices, etc., very safely. Now, these fires, we wake up, we see the pictures, the correspondents go to the places, we hear the unfortunate stories, and some people are saying it's the season. I have noticed, yes, as weather gets maybe a bit drier towards the end of the year, there seems to be a spike. This doesn't mean that fires don't happen in other seasons, but this recent, event has been remarkable because so quick, so soon, in such a short time. And what is it that, first of all, makes a fire happen? There are 3 fundamentals. I mean, we're discussing it before we came on air, and I think Dr. Enwin is in the best position to at least take us on the fundamentals. Right. What is a fire?
Dr. Enwin?
Thank you, Bozimo. I imagine that fire lives with us. We know fire domestically, we know fire on the street. But there are 4 things that come together to make The first is the fuel, the second is heat, the third is oxygen, and the fourth one is chemical reaction.
Right.
So when the other three come together and they react, sometimes there are other kinds of fire that come. So we need to look at that. So in addressing fire, what you should know is that until these things come together, there is no fire.
True.
So there is heat, there's fuel, there's oxygen, and then they react when they come together. So if you remove heat, keep away the substance that
The
causes
substance,
that,
the fuel, so to
the
speak.
fuel, and then you keep away oxygen, they will come together. So anytime you start fire of any of them, fire cannot spark.
Right.
So if you put them together, then they can spark. So I think what is fundamental first to understand that you do not need to keep these things together if you do not want fire.
Exactly.
Therefore, my jerrycan for fuel, my jerrycan for kerosene, my jerrycan for diesel, my firewood that I'm not using now, my stove should not be at a certain distance, should be at a minimum distance from where I live.
Right.
You can arrange those things. The moment you do that, even when fire has come, in a kitchen you fry something and then you have a spark like that. If you pull off maybe the pan or the pot, you can use a fire towel, a fire blanket and cover it. Start it of oxygen. But these things are not there. And I also think that what is more fundamental again is that we do not have this basic understanding and training.
Right.
You know, so I think that is what we can try to bring forth to the fore so that people can understand that there are certain small things they can do to keep away fire.
In fact, I think it's important because there's a possibility of people thinking that when we say the fuel of a fire, we're talking about petrol and diesel. Fuel is any item that can actually burn. So yes, petrol is fuel for cars, but a curtain or a bed sheet or a towel is fuel for a fire, potential fuel for a fire. So like you said, as long as we're keeping those aspects and elements, even one of them away from coming together, then you have, even if you have an incident, you can much easier control it. Yes.
And I find that, listening to you, Doctor, speak, you find that, people do not have, education in this regard. People do not know what to do, what not to do when it comes to, fire incidences. And I think that's a very huge loophole, especially in these parts that we're in. So how do you think people can learn better about safety tips, for instance, when it comes to avoiding fire incidences?
Unfortunately, that's the failure of society today, because by our systems, whether at the national level or the state or local government level, we should understand these basic safety things and have these drills, have this education on our streets, like what you are doing today. This is rare.
Absolutely.
This is a wonderful platform and we appreciate it. So if we find ways, we have Ministry of Information, but what do they do? What do they tell the people? So it's important that we know that fire can be caused by not just a gas bottle. You have matches in your house. How do you strike it? Where do you keep it? So these things we can tell people from time to time. Market association, we can build advocacy about it and ensure that we're able to come at the lowest level so that people know, especially now when hunger is pushing people to doing things that are not just ungodly,
but unsafe,
but deadly. Like my brother said, listen, hazard means anything that has potential to cause harm or death.
Right.
So to be hazardous means there's a potential cause for that. And there are a lot of hazardous things where we live. So if we tell them, well, the basic thing now as a solution is what we call in safety is housekeeping. You are able to put things, the right things where they should be. Right things at right place. In some of our houses, everything is put up together. But we can arrange our homes, our offices, our places where we work to the extent that the things that should be where they are should be where they are. Gas bottle outside, kerosene outside, the generator not close to us. Some persons put on their generator while fueling.
That is one of the most.
They are watching telemundo. It's so important. So before it goes, before it goes off, they leave the thing on and pour fuel inside. Those things are not supposed to be. And we can, from time to time, find avenues to educate them. I think education is at the
Absolutely. I just think there is nothing more dangerous than mixing a source of heat and sparks with a source of combustion. That's something I cannot conceive of doing. In fact, even when the generator goes off, you should leave between 10 and 30 minutes for it to completely cool down. But that's you would say is common sense, but we've heard stories where people actually suffer horrible burns because of that. So, fundamentally, as we said, you are trying to talk about what caused the fire, then how to detect it. There is the one where the fire is the heat that alerts you. That's already too late. Really, what you're looking for in an ideal situation is where there are devices or gadgets. They could be smoke detectors, they could be other alarm systems that immediately alert you once the fire is just starting, because it's always easier to fight a fire when it is new, when it's very small, when it's not become a huge conflagration. And so there could be a variety of, fire detection devices and so on that I think Dr. Daminabo could address.
Yes, I like that we just jump right into that, so
Right.
we can open the phone lines, for people to join the conversation.
Yeah, talking about fire detection, first of all, you must understand, let me be a little bit academic. Within a building, you have inflammable contents which have calorific values that determines the density of the contents that are inflammable in the building. And then you need, the first step in detecting fire is at the individual level.
Right.
At the individual level, where you observe and you raise an alarm. Then you have the automatic systems, depending on the type of building. If it's a residential building, it will go to the individual level. If it's an office block or a high-rise building, you have fire sprinkler system, alarm systems in the building that will give you an early warning so that people can be evacuated from the building in time, safely and safely. So you have to look at all this. There are other electronic systems within the building that can give an early warning so that people are safe within the building and being evacuated from the building before the fire consumes the entire structure. So it's always good to inform people that fire is dangerous, when it is not detected on time, because people will be caught in the inferno.
Right.
And it's always good to make sure that those items that constitute inflammable materials are not put in places where they will cause problems to the occupants of the building when the fire is ignited. So I want to advise our listeners that, number one, if you are probably cooking or you are ironing in your house, you should make sure that you are not leaving that item for a few minutes to watch TV, or you're on the internet, or you are in a conversation with another person, because before you know it, that fire, the hazard is already there, and you have the problem of having a conflagration of flame in the whole apartment. So that's very important to take note of that kind of situation so that we don't get caught up. So people should always watch out for the signals of fire. Either there are some simple fire smoke alarms that you can install. It's battery operated.
Right.
So if you have it in the kitchen, probably you're watching a wonderful program on TV, it will warn you so that you go and put up that pot on time. If not, it could be a source of fire hazard to the occupants of the building.
I'm really glad you mentioned the last thing that you mentioned about the sprinklers. You can easily, I beg your pardon, smoke detectors that you can easily, install in your homes. Because I'm thinking right now to someone who's looking to rent a space, right?
Yes.
A residential space. You're moving in. You're not asking questions like, "Oh, are there fire detectors in this building?" That's not one of the popular questions that
not
people
typically.
ask.
The question is there water?
Exactly. And I find that
federal light.
when it comes to safety, especially within these residential business, commercial
Premises,
buildings,
yes.
we don't ask these questions, these pertinent questions like fire. We're thinking, is there power supply? Is there, ventilation? Is there water supply,
All
etc.?
valid request,
Valid.
but somehow we subsume safety as one of the additional valid considerations.
My question right now, let me ask you,
Okay.
Dr. Daminabo, how can we, get to that place as people and as owners of property, wherein we take these precautionary measures more seriously than we already are?
I think first of all, you have to think of when you're developing the building at the design stage. The designers, the professionals should try to solve this problem at the inception. Because if you don't do that, somebody looking for an apartment, the primary goal is, I need a shelter over my head.
Right.
So he's not going to ask you, and then how much is it going to cost
Oh
you?
yeah.
So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
I want a place quickly to get in with my family, and how much is it?
Yeah.
Not what's the fire safety mechanisms
Yeah.
you installed in the building. So he parks in there, it's comfortable, and then fire. Because the designers didn't put sprinklers, they didn't put an early warning system, they didn't put a means of egress from the building, because you have fire doors, assuming you have a kitchen area. So you have a fire door, especially between the kitchen and the inner part of the building, not the exit part, because there you have to get out quickly. So, but the truth is that, do we have fire doors at the right places? The structural elements, are they treated to resist fire? So these are what the codes profile. So the designer and the client will always discuss such issues at the inception to make sure it's covered. So that if you pack into that building, all these things have been addressed. And then the incidents of fire won't arise. So it's important for us to know that before you get into an apartment or you are building one, you must ask those vital questions about fire, because fire will take away the property from you, so you lose a lot of revenue or your life. So it's important that you ask those questions. And here in this country, regulatory bodies don't actually set these codes and enforce it. Every other place, when you go there, a building will have a fire certificate. So you see it covering a period of 6 months or 1 year.
Right.
So that you don't need to worry. If that fire certificate is not there, the owner or whoever is in charge of that building is penalized.
Well, they can't actually rent it to anybody.
No.
Because it's part of the requirements for that structure.
Obviously.
So obviously we have a foundational problem. If we had some form of enforcement, maybe just maybe would, have better management
Absolutely.
of fire incidences.
We have codes, as I said at the start, that we actually design to. But if there is no, like what we talked about, the owner actually losing his property, that alone would be enough incentive for an owner to really want to invest in these systems. Many of these fire detection and prevention things are within the realm of the mechanical and electrical engineer. Sprinkler systems, automatic smoke and fire detectors, those are devices that our colleagues in the built environment put for us. But of course, we are the ones who specify the nature of the space and what it be used for, so that they can now put the appropriate equipment. It's always teamwork, as I say. None of us works alone. And when you think about the danger to people's lives, even if you don't lose your lives, if you are harmed permanently, that's a distinct, reason not to want to experience a fire. So I think from the regulatory authorities, if they put their foot down that if this structure doesn't meet X, Y, Z standards, you cannot rent it out, you cannot use it for an office, then people will have to do what they must do. Like I've always said, there's never been a day when somebody wants to make a brand new suit and they go to a carpenter. Get the right people to do the right things for you, and you will first of all protect your property, and of course the lives of anybody who might use that property.
No, I'm thinking one of the assumptions that many people might have is the fact that some of these, safety equipment come expensive. Is that true? Would you say they come expensive? Because I'm thinking
they don't
the
cost,
sprinklers, for instance.
They don't cost zero, that's for sure. But in anything you're doing in construction, you are weighing the risk versus the reward. There is a right time to put these things in, typically at the stage of conception and construction. It's much more difficult to retrofit them. It's not impossible, but it's much more expensive. When the site is raw and dirty and wet, you can crack walls and paint and everything now looks perfect. Coming back afterwards may be more expensive, but what are you preserving? You're preserving your property. Because accidents happen. Fires, let's say, apart from arson, accidents happen. If you have systems that can help suppress the effects of the fire, if an accident happens, you're able to retrieve all or at least most of your property. So is that not a worthwhile thing to have spent the money on? Or do you say, okay, I'm saving X naira, and your building unfortunately is destroyed entirely? That money you saved, how far? So it's really always a case where, as professionals working together, we propose these things to owners. Based on the nature of the space, what will be done there, we specify what it should be. And we are always in position to oversee the implementation to ensure that they're installed properly, they are tested appropriately, and so they work properly in the event of a potential disaster.
We're going to take a very quick break now. At this point, we're still talking fire safety fundamentals. We'd like for you to join the conversation. We'll open the phone lines right after this break. So if you don't have the numbers to call are 0817 923 0002, 0817 923 0003. You can also call 0817 923 0007 or 0817 923 0009. We'll be right back shortly after this. Don't go away.
Structure,
Lease,
construction,
edifice,
infrastructure,
masterpiece,
residential, industrial, commercial.
define, design, refine. Architects World, delving into the field of design, opening the mind to possibilities, highlighting opportunities for everyday living. Architects World, Tuesdays 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. on 92.3 Nigeria Info.
Welcome back to the conversation. It's still Architects World right here on your number one talk news and sports radio station, Nigeria Info FM I am Gabriella. Today we're talking fire safety fundamentals. In the past week, there's been a series of reports of fire incidents across Nigeria. Almost more than 3 cases, if not 4, here in the River State alone, and that's worrisome. Many people say, oh, it's the season. Some say, it's the ember spirit. People target different things, but really it boils down to safety fundamentals. And that's why we're having this conversation today. My guest, as always, Architect Bozimo is here. And we also have with us in the studio Dr. Ferdinand, Daminabo, and Dr. Enwin, who are helping us understand what these fundamentals are. You can join the conversation. We're streaming live on Facebook at Nigeria Info 92.3 PH. You can also join the conversation via WhatsApp. The WhatsApp number is 0809 030 6416 0809 030 6416. Good afternoon. Hello. Alright, so you're going to have to call us back. Can't hear a thing. So, still talking fire safety fundamentals, Architect Bozimo. I'm thinking right now, think about the last fire that happened at the LHE beach here. Right. I'm thinking also the one that happened, what's that place again, where the oil spill happened the other time.
I remember, I saw the fires.
But these are the pictures. And I'm thinking people in such areas, people who live in rural communities, do not necessarily live in these buildings that have these fire safety, measures installed, or even have the opportunity to have these conversations. How can people in such areas be safety conscious, fire safety conscious?
I think one of the key things is that governments and regulators have to play their role to ensure the safety of the citizenry. Yes, people live in unplanned environments, but it's the responsibility of government to go and impose some forms of planning, some forms of separation, some forms of compartmentalization. I know not everybody has the access to the same types of buildings, but even within those communities, it must be possible to make the chances of fires happening lower and the chance of surviving those fires higher. So you can't just fill up an entire space with structures. There must be separation, because sometimes a fire could happen in one place, but if there's proper separation between this structure and the next, it cannot spread. One of the worst things that happens each time is it happens in one place and it spreads across 15, 20, 18 other residences. So those people had nothing to do with it in the first place, but all of them have suffered. It must be possible, unless there is no government, to impose better planning standards, even in the unplanned areas.
All right, to the phone lines now. Good afternoon. Oh dear, who wants to call us back? Hello?
Hello? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, you're welcome.
Yeah, I think I genuinely agree with Architect Bozimo on regulation. The key or the ball stops at the government table. You can't build a maybe 5-story building. I'm talking of office space or 2 or 3-story building with little or no plan for fire emergencies. It's totally ridiculous. I don't even want to start talking about residential houses. How somebody will build a 8-block flat or 8-flat block, either way you want to look at it. There's absolutely no plan for fire emergencies. I don't understand it. I don't know if it's the idea of cutting corners or we're not taking the issue of safety serious. We are even talking about offices, we are talking about residential houses. Who has even thought of our schools? Who has even thought of schools where children, I think in Niger Republic that was in the other time, there was a fire incident in a school and lots of pupils died. Who thinks about these things? I think the truth is that government needs to step up or live up to expectations. A lot of people can't think on their own, but it's your job to think for people's safety. Because what is it called? The protection of lives and property is the responsibility of the government. These things are things that they should, as a matter of compulsion, things should be a prerequisite for having a structure, whether residential, school, church, anything that will make people gather, and there is a chance of fire incidents. Regulations should come up in place that if this is so and so building will be here, there should be so and so in case of fire emergency. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your thought. I mean, you mentioned something during the break after Bozimo, talking about, schools and the role they can even play in teaching children at that age,
In fact, at the very early stage in many foreign schools, they teach young children. There's something called stop, drop, and roll. In American schools, they first of all made a mascot. There's a bear. So children are, charmed by that bear. Then they taught all the children that in case of fire, you should stop, you should drop, and you should roll on the ground. And other people around you should cover you. So from age 2, 3, 4, they have already been trained. When you are young in school, suddenly in the middle of class, there's a fire drill. Everybody get up, go out to a designated place. What they're doing is teaching you how not to panic, because what kills in fire is not necessarily being burnt by the flames. It is two things: smoke inhalation and confusion that comes from it, and just not knowing what to do, not knowing where to go. So when you are trained by the drills, then you don't panic, and you can better survive it. When you start at a very early stage, children growing up into adults know the right things to do. And then, of course, in each of our buildings, we need things like not fire hydrants, which we don't have in our society. That's another conversation. But Dr. Enwin, you were talking about some of these things that we ought to have.
Yeah, I just said that at the elementary level, we can have extinguishers.
Right.
And they come in sizes and types. Some you can refill. They do expire, but they are.
That's a first line of defense.
And they are sustainable.
Yes.
So you are able to get them. How many kitchens have fire extinguishers?
Really?
So we need to have them in our houses. Another thing in public...
And they're not horribly expensive
They are not.
either.
They are not. They are, like I said, they're sizes, and you can afford them. And then in public places like they just mentioned, you enter a school, and there is no plan of the building.
Evacuation.
Not even the evacuation plan, even at least the plan for that building. Telling children, if it gets a fire, come out of a classroom, run along this corridor.
Exactly.
So every facility, every office, as you enter, you should know the plan of a shopping mall. This is the plan. So in case of any kind of threat, you know how to go out. And then there must be a muster point.
You're right. It's not even only fire. Any other kind of threat. There should be a plan.
Yes, there's a plan. So I think that we should get back home. Yes, I agree with the caller, that government needs to do something. The time is over.
Compulsion.
The time is over. We'll just
That's
say,
why they're government.
yeah, we are stamping a drawing, architectural drawing stamp, M&E stamp. We should go beyond that to say that every house, every residential building should have a plan. Where is your safety plan? Where do you put your extinguishers? Where do you put other systems that can contain fire? We need to do that.
So there are a few take-homes today. Sorry, our time is off, but there are a few take-homes. Do not feed a potential fire.
No.
Indeed.
So whatever can fuel that fire, put it away, be it material, be it oxygen, be it heat, whatever
Store
that
things
might be.
carefully. Housekeeping
Store
was the
them
word.
well.
Keep
Housekeeping,
things
yes.
neatly so that you reduce potential for confusion or conflagration.
I wish we could do this again, because
We'll-
time really doesn't permit us to have a full conversation.
Not a problem. The good thing is that we raise the awareness,
Right.
we discuss these things, and I hope some people think about, okay, on my next month's budget, I should consider at least a fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
Go home today, think about your residence, and ask yourself and your family, in case there's a disaster right here, right now, what do we do? Come up with your own residential disaster management plan.
That's an assignment for you this week.
Each of us.
Yeah. And then I want to add that talking about regulators and the government, the role government has to play. We don't have fire departments that are functional anywhere to call when there's an emergency. And some of the areas that this fire is prevalent are in the slums, where you have a lot of commercial activity.
Yeah.
You know, and the fire engine, even if they are working, can't get
In time.
enough to even get gain access into those areas.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, people try with a few buckets of water,
Yeah.
and it's not going to solve the problem. So government will look at this area, especially urban slums. And if you go to areas like Diogo and all those places,
Right.
you have cluster of residential buildings with one of the block to have more than 100 people with their families
Yeah.
in that place. If there's fire, and the proximity of one building to the other will create a lot of problems.
All right, we have to wrap up now. Thank you so
Oh,
much. But
yes.
let's have your social media handles, doctors. So on
Facebook?
Facebook.
Yes,
Yes.
Facebook.
Tony Enwin.
Sorry?
Tony Enwin.
Okay. And yours?
Dr. Ferdinand is on Facebook, so you can reach me there.
Dr. Ferdinand. All right. Architect Bozimo?
At AB Bozimo on all the
On
platforms.
all platforms.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time.
Always a pleasure
Have
and
yourselves a
privilege.
lovely afternoon.
All right.
All right. At this point, we're going to wrap the conversation up on the sunny side, but it does continue with Dio on Hard Factor 3 p.m. right after Rivers Today. I am Gabriella. Let's do this again tomorrow.